The sound of wood splintering echoed through the dusty afternoon as Olivia Morgan struggled to hold back tears. The wagon wheel had cracked beyond repair, and here she was, miles from town with a 7-year-old son trying his best to be the man of the family. Her hands were raw from the previous attempts to fix the damaged wheel, and now her son Tommy was on his knees, his small fingers fumbling with tools far too large for his grip. Montana Territory, 1878. This was not how Olivia had imagined her life would unfold. 3 months a widow with nothing but a plot of uncultivated land and memories of a husband who'd succumbed to pneumonia during the harsh winter. "I can fix it, Ma," Tommy insisted, his voice tight with concentration. "Pa showed me how before." Olivia swallowed hard before he died. The words hung unspoken between them. The sound of approaching hoofbeats made her straighten, one hand instinctively reaching for the small revolver tucked in her apron pocket. The Montana Territory could be unforgiving to a woman alone. A tall figure on horseback emerged from the shimmering heat of the horizon. As he drew closer, Olivia could make out the weathered face beneath a wide-brimmed hat, the strong set of shoulders draped in a dusty duster coat, and the careful, assessing gaze that took in the broken wagon and the small boy working diligently on the wheel. "Afternoon, madam," the stranger called, his voice deep and resonant in the quiet landscape. He dismounted with the easy grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. His eyes, the color of a summer storm, moved from Olivia to Tommy, who continued to struggle with the tools. The stranger approached the boy, crouching down beside him. "That's a father's work, not yours, son," he said gently, his voice carrying to where Olivia stood frozen. Tommy looked up, his face flushed with effort and pride. "My pa's dead, mister. It's my job now." Something shifted in the stranger's expression, a softening around the eyes, a tightness to his jaw. He placed a large hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You're doing a fine job, but maybe I could lend a hand. My name's Jackson Reed. Most folks call me Jack." Olivia stepped forward, her heart pounding with a mixture of wariness and desperate hope. "I'm Olivia Morgan. This is my son, Tommy. We'd be mighty grateful for any help you could offer, Mr. Reed." Jack stood, dusting off his hands on his worn denim pants. "Just Jack, madam." "And it would be my pleasure." His eyes met hers, and for a moment, Olivia felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time, a flutter of awareness that had nothing to do with fear or grief. "We're heading to our homestead," she explained, gesturing vaguely northward. "About 10 miles from here. My husband staked a claim last fall, but—" She trailed off, unwilling to burden a stranger with her sorrows. Jack nodded, understanding in his eyes. Without another word, he removed his coat and hat, rolling up his sleeves to reveal sun-bronzed forearms corded with muscle. He knelt beside the broken wheel, examining the damage with practiced hands. "You've got a split axle and a cracked hub," he diagnosed. "I can fix it enough to get you home, but you'll need proper repairs soon." He glanced up at Olivia. "Do you have spare lumber in your wagon?" She nodded, relieved that this man seemed to know what he was doing. As Jack worked, Tommy hovered nearby, watching with rapt attention as strong, capable hands manipulated tools and wood with skill that spoke of years of experience. "You a carpenter, Mr. Jack?" Tommy asked, his voice tinged with admiration. Jack smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his weather-beaten face. "I've turned my hand to most trades over the years. Spent some time building houses in Denver, worked cattle drives up from Texas, even tried my luck in the goldfields." A man learns to fix things when there's no one else around to do it. Olivia watched the exchange, something warming inside her chest. It had been so long since Tommy had a man to look up to ask questions of. The boy's father had been loving but often absent, chasing dreams of prosperity that never quite materialized. "Where are you headed, Mr. Reed?" she asked, offering him a dipper of water from their barrel. Jack accepted it gratefully, taking a long drink before answering. "Nowhere particular. Just following the season's work." He paused, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Though I heard there's good grazing land opening up north of here, thought I might take a look. That's where we're going, Tommy piped up. Pa bought land there. We're going to have the biggest farm in the territory. That's what Pa said. Jack's eyes found Olivia's over the boy's head, questions in them that he was too polite to ask. How would a woman and a small boy manage a homestead alone? The same questions that had kept Olivia awake through long, cold nights since Joseph's death. It's good land, she said defensively. My husband had vision, if not always practicality. We'll manage. Jack nodded, returning to his work without comment. Within an hour, the wheel was repaired well enough to bear weight, and the axle reinforced with strips of metal from Jack's own saddlebags. That should hold you, he said, standing back to admire his handiwork. But go easy. No fast turns or rough terrain if you can help it. Olivia reached for her purse. What do we owe you, Mr. Reed? Jack shook his head. Nothing, madam, just helping neighbors. We're not neighbors yet, she said with a small smile. Something sparked in his eyes. Maybe fate has plans we don't know about. He tipped his hat and turned toward his horse. Tommy tugged at his mother's skirt. Ma, can't Mr. Jack come with us, just to make sure the wheel holds? Olivia hesitated. Inviting a strange man to accompany them went against every cautious bone in her body. But there was something about Jackson Reed that inspired trust, a steadiness in his gaze, a gentleness with her son. Mr. Reed has his own journey, Tommy, she began. Actually, Jack interrupted, if you wouldn't mind the company, I'd feel better seeing you safely to your homestead. Those repairs might need adjusting along the way. The sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains, painting the landscape in golds and reds. Olivia knew they wouldn't reach the homestead before dark, and the thought of making camp alone with Tommy had been weighing on her. We would welcome your company, she said finally, but I insist on feeding you in return for your help. Jack's smile was slow and warm. That's a bargain I'd be a fool to refuse. As they traveled, the conversation flowed more easily than Olivia would have expected. Jack had a way of drawing out Tommy's chatter without being intrusive, and he shared stories of his travels that fascinated them both. He spoke of cattle drives under star-filled skies, of mountain passes so high the air thinned to nothing, of desert heat that could bake a man's thoughts right out of his head. When they stopped to make camp for the night, Jack efficiently gathered firewood and built a fire while Olivia prepared a simple meal from their provisions. Tommy followed Jack like a shadow, asking questions about everything from how to tie proper knots to what kind of wood burned best. You're good with him, Olivia observed quietly as they sat by the fire after Tommy had fallen asleep in the wagon. Jack's eyes reflected the dancing flames. He's a good boy, smart, brave too, takes after his mother, I'd wager. Olivia felt a blush warm her cheeks. His father was the brave one. I'm just surviving. Survival takes more courage than most folks realize, Jack said. He was silent for a moment, staring into the fire. I lost my wife and daughter to cholera 5 years ago. Thought I'd die too, but the body keeps going even when the heart wants to stop. The simple admission of shared grief formed a bridge between them. Olivia found herself telling him about Joseph, his dreams, his gentle nature, his inability to say no to a challenge or an opportunity, no matter how risky. He was a good man, she concluded. Not always practical, but he loved us fiercely. That's what matters in the end, Jack agreed. Not what a man builds, but who he loves. The night wrapped around them like a blanket, the vast canopy of stars a reminder of how small they were in the grand scheme of things. Yet sitting there, sharing the warmth of the fire with this stranger who no longer felt strange, Olivia sensed possibilities she had thought forever closed to her. Morning came with dew-kissed grass and the soft nickering of horses. Jack had breakfast ready by the time Olivia and Tommy emerged from the wagon, coffee for her and hot porridge for them all, sweetened with the last of her precious sugar. You didn't have to, she protested. Early habits die hard, he replied with a shrug. Been cooking my own breakfast for years. They broke camp efficiently and continued their journey. The land began to change, rolling hills giving way to a broad valley cut by a silver thread of river. Stands of cottonwood trees marked its course, their leaves shimmering in the breeze. "That's Elk Creek," Olivia said, pointing. "Our land begins just beyond that rise and stretches to the foothills." Jack nodded appreciatively. "Good water, good grazing, your husband chose well." As they crested the rise, the homestead came into view. It was modest, a small cabin with a partially completed barn and corral. The cabin's roof needed repair, and the fields that Joseph had begun to clear lay fallow, returning to prairie grass. Olivia felt a stab of shame at the property's neglected state. In the 3 months since Joseph's death, she had focused solely on survival, on feeding Tommy and keeping him safe. The larger dreams of the homestead had seemed impossible for her alone. Jack said nothing, but his expression was thoughtful as he surveyed the land. He helped her unload the wagon and settle the horses, then stood awkwardly by his own mount. "Well, Mrs. Morgan, Tommy," he said, tipping his hat. "Looks like you're home safe. I should be on my way." Tommy's face fell. "But you just got here. Can't you stay? Just for a little while?" Olivia knew she should insist that Mr. Reed continue on his journey. A respectable widow did not invite a strange man to linger. But the thought of watching him ride away, of facing the enormous task of the homestead alone again, made her heart constrict painfully. "Mr. Reed," she said formally, "I know it's an imposition, but if you're looking for work, we could use a hired hand, just until we get on our feet. The barn needs finishing and the fields." She gestured helplessly at the untamed landscape. Jack's eyes held hers for a long moment. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Morgan? I'm a stranger to you." "You fixed our wagon and brought us safely home," she replied. "That's more than many would have done. And Tommy?" She glanced at her son, who was looking between them with hopeful eyes. Tommy could use a man's guidance with certain things. A slow smile spread across Jack's face. "Well, when you put it that way, it would be ungentlemanly to refuse." He extended his hand. "You've got yourself a hired hand, Mrs. Morgan." The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both new and strangely familiar. Jack rose before dawn each day, tending to the animals before Olivia even had the cook stove lit. He worked tirelessly, repairing the cabin roof, finishing the half-built barn, clearing more land for planting. Tommy shadowed him whenever Olivia would allow, absorbing knowledge like a sponge: how to mend fences, care for horses, read weather from the sky. In the evenings, Jack would whittle by the fire, creating small wooden animals for Tommy while sharing stories of his travels. Olivia found herself watching Jack when he wasn't aware, the way the muscles in his back moved beneath his shirt as he chopped wood, the gentleness in his hands when he helped Tommy with a task, the distant look that sometimes came into his eyes when he thought himself unobserved. A month passed, then 2. Summer ripened around them, the fields Jack had plowed now sprouting with corn and vegetables from the seeds Olivia had brought. The barn stood complete, housing not only their 2 draft horses but also a milk cow Jack had traded for with a passing settler. They had not discussed how long he would stay, and Olivia found herself increasingly anxious about the subject. Jack had become essential not just to the homestead but to them. Tommy blossomed under his guidance, and Olivia had begun to feel things she had not expected to feel again. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular colors, Tommy already asleep inside, Jack broke their comfortable silence. "I ran into Jim Hansen from town today when I was checking the north fence line," he said. "He mentioned there's a harvest dance next Saturday at the meeting hall." Olivia's hands stilled on the shirt she was mending. "Oh," Jack cleared his throat. "I thought perhaps you and Tommy might enjoy going, getting to know some of the neighbors." "That would be nice," she agreed, her heart beating a little faster. "Will you come with us?" He turned to look at her, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "If you'd like me to." "I would," she said softly. Their eyes held for a long moment before Olivia looked away, flustered. "Tommy would too, of course." Jack nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Of course. The day of the dance brought a flurry of activity. Olivia washed and pressed her best dress, a blue calico that Joseph had always said matched her eyes. She fussed with her hair, pinning and unpinning it until settling on a simple style that framed her face. Tommy was scrubbed until he complained, his usually unruly hair slicked down with water. But it was Jack who surprised them both, emerging from the barn where he slept freshly shaven, his hair trimmed, wearing a clean white shirt and vest that Olivia had never seen before. "Mr. Reed," she said, a teasing note in her voice, "you clean up remarkably well." His eyes traveled over her, appreciation evident in his gaze. "As do you, Mrs. Morgan. That color suits you." The meeting hall was decorated with lanterns and wildflowers, the rough-hewn floor cleared for dancing. A three-piece band played lively tunes in one corner, while tables laden with food lined another wall. Tommy quickly found other children to play with, leaving Jack and Olivia to navigate the social waters together. Introductions were made, with Olivia explaining Jack's presence as their hired hand. If knowing looks were exchanged among the women or appraising glances cast by the men, Olivia pretended not to notice. "Would you care to dance, Mrs. Morgan?" Jack asked as the musicians struck up a waltz. Olivia hesitated. She hadn't danced since Joseph died. It felt both disloyal and frightening to consider it now. "I'm not sure I remember how," she admitted. Jack's smile was gentle. "I'll remind you." His hand at her waist was warm and steady as he guided her onto the floor. They moved together with unexpected harmony, his confidence compensating for her initial stiffness until she relaxed into the music and the moment. "You're a fine dancer, Mr. Reed," she said, looking up into his face. "Jack," he corrected. "After all this time, I think you might call me Jack when we're not in front of the boy." "Jack," she repeated, liking the way his name felt on her lips. "Then you must call me Olivia." The evening progressed in a haze of music, laughter, and shared glances. Olivia danced with other men from the community, but her eyes always sought Jack, finding him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. As the night deepened, Tommy fell asleep on a bench, and Jack suggested they head home. The wagon ride back to the homestead was quiet, the sleeping boy between them, the vast Montana sky ablaze with stars overhead. "I haven't enjoyed myself like that in a very long time," Olivia confessed as they approached the cabin. "Nor have I," Jack replied. He helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for allowing me to escort you." "Thank you for asking," she said softly. In the silver moonlight, his face was shadowed but his eyes were bright. For a heartbeat, Olivia thought he might kiss her, and more startling was the realization that she wanted him to. But the moment passed as Tommy stirred and mumbled in his sleep. Jack lifted the boy easily, carrying him into the cabin and laying him gently on his bed. Olivia removed Tommy's shoes and covered him with a quilt, brushing the hair from his forehead with a tender touch. When she turned, Jack was watching from the doorway, something unspoken in his expression. "Good night, Olivia," he said, his voice low. "Good night, Jack." After he left for the barn, Olivia stood in the quiet cabin, her heart full of conflicting emotions. She was a widow still grieving her husband, with a young son who needed stability. Jack was a drifter, a man who by his own admission had spent years wandering. What future could there possibly be in the feelings blossoming between them? Yet as she prepared for bed, Olivia could not deny the warmth that spread through her at the memory of Jack's arms around her as they danced, or the way his eyes had held hers in the moonlight. The following days brought a subtle shift in their interactions. There were more accidental touches, lingering glances, moments of shared laughter. Jack began teaching Tommy to ride properly on an old gentle mare he'd traded for, and Olivia found herself watching them together with a growing sense of rightness that both comforted and terrified her. One afternoon, as summer edged toward autumn, a wagon appeared on the horizon, approaching the homestead. Olivia shaded her eyes against the sun, unable to make out who might be visiting. "Jack," she called. He emerged from the barn, squinting in the direction she pointed. "Stay here," he said, his hand dropping instinctively to the revolver he wore. "I'll see who it is." The wagon drew closer, revealing a man and woman with a child. As they approached, the man raised his hand in greeting. "That's David and Sarah Johnson," Olivia said, recognizing their neighbors from 10 miles east. They came to Joseph's funeral. Relief evident in his posture, Jack holstered his weapon and moved to greet the visitors. The Johnsons had brought freshly butchered beef to share and news from the broader community. Over a hastily prepared meal, they explained the purpose of their visit. "We're organizing a barn raising for the Wilsons next week," David explained. "Their place burned in that lightning storm last month. Thought you might want to join in." "Of course," Olivia agreed immediately. Community support was the backbone of frontier life. "I'll bring pies and help with the meal. And I'll lend a hand with the building," Jack added. Sarah Johnson's eyes moved between Jack and Olivia with undisguised curiosity. "We heard Mrs. Morgan had taken on a hired hand, but we didn't know the details. How long have you been working here, Mr. Reed?" "Going on 3 months now," Jack replied easily. "And do you plan to stay through the winter?" Sarah pressed. An uncomfortable silence fell. Jack and Olivia had not discussed the future beyond the immediate tasks of preparing the homestead for the coming cold months. "I haven't made firm plans," Jack said finally, his eyes finding Olivia's across the table. Later, after the Johnsons had departed, Jack found Olivia by the creek that ran through their property. She was washing dishes in the clear water, her sleeves rolled up, her hair coming loose from its pins. "I'm sorry if Mrs. Johnson's questions made you uncomfortable," he said, crouching beside her. Olivia kept her eyes on her task. "People will talk, it's the way of small communities." "Does that bother you, what people might say about me being here?" She looked up then, meeting his gaze directly. "What bothers me is not knowing your intentions, Jack. Are you planning to move on once winter sets in? Because if you are, I need to prepare. Tommy has grown attached to you, and she broke off, unable to complete the thought. Jack was silent for a long moment, his eyes on the rippling water. "I've never stayed in one place very long," he admitted. "Not since I lost my family. There didn't seem much point in putting down roots again." Olivia felt her heart constrict. "And now. He picked up a smooth stone, turning it over in his fingers. "Now I find myself thinking about spring planting and where to expand the corral, about Tommy learning to read and what he'll look like when he's grown." His eyes met hers. "About how the morning light catches in your hair when you're kneading bread." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. "Jack, I'm not asking for anything, Olivia," he interrupted gently. "I know it's too soon, and I know you still love your husband. I just want you to know that I'd like to stay if you'll have me, not just as a hired hand." The dishes forgotten, Olivia sat back on her heels, her wet hands dripping onto her apron. "I don't know what to say." Jack smiled, though there was a sadness in it. "You don't need to say anything now. Winter's coming. We have time." The barn raising brought nearly every family within 20 miles to the Wilson property. Men worked with coordinated efficiency, raising walls and setting rafters, while women prepared a feast to feed the hungry workers. Children ran underfoot, alternately helping and hindering the process. Olivia found herself working alongside Sarah Johnson and several other women, preparing massive quantities of food. The conversation flowed easily among them, touching on everything from preserving techniques to the health of their livestock to the upcoming school term. "Your hired hand seems quite capable," Sarah commented as they worked, "and handsome too, quite a fortunate arrangement for a widow alone." There was no malice in her tone, but Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "Mr. Reed has been a blessing," she said carefully. "I don't know how we would have managed without him." "Is he planning to stay on then?" another woman asked, her tone deliberately casual. Olivia focused on crimping the edge of a pie crust. "We haven't discussed it formally." Sarah exchanged knowing glances with the other women. "Well, a good man is hard to find out here. If I were you, I'd make sure he had reasons to stay." Throughout the day, Olivia found her eyes drawn to Jack as he worked alongside the other men. His shirt clung to his back, damp with honest sweat, as he hefted timbers and called instructions. She wasn't the only woman watching him, she noticed, a spark of something like jealousy flaring when young Mary Wilson brought him a cup of water, lingering to chat. "Your Mr. Reed is quite popular," Sarah observed, following Olivia's gaze. "He's not my Mr. Reed," Olivia protested, but the words rang hollow even to her own ears. By sundown, the basic structure of the barn was complete. Lanterns were lit, fiddles appeared, and the work gathering transformed into a celebration. As music filled the air, Jack found Olivia sitting with Tommy, who was fighting sleep after an exciting day. "May I have this dance?" he asked, extending his hand. Olivia glanced at her drowsy son. "I should get Tommy home, it's been a long day." "I can take him, Mrs. Morgan," offered Mrs. Wilson. "He can sleep with our boys in the house until you're ready to leave." With Tommy settled, Olivia let Jack lead her among the other dancing couples. His hand at her waist was familiar now, comforting in its strength. "You worked hard today," she said, noting the tiredness around his eyes. "It's good work, helping neighbors, building something that will last." His eyes held hers. "That's what community means, being part of something larger than yourself." Olivia heard the longing in his voice. "Is that what you want, Jack, to be part of a community?" His steps slowed. "I want to be part of your life, Olivia, yours and Tommy's, if you'll let me." The music, the lanterns, the people around them seemed to fade as Olivia looked up into Jack's face. She saw the hope there, the vulnerability beneath his strength. "I'm afraid," she admitted quietly. "Of losing someone again, of making a mistake, of people judging us." Jack's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen, no one can, but I can promise to face whatever comes together if you'll have me." Olivia thought of Tommy's face lighting up when Jack taught him something new, of the homestead slowly transforming under Jack's care, of the way her own heart had begun to heal in his presence. "I think," she said slowly, "that I would like to try." The smile that transformed Jack's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He drew her closer as they danced, their bodies moving in perfect harmony as the fiddles played on into the night. The journey home was quiet, Tommy asleep in the back of the wagon, exhausted from the day's excitement. Stars carpeted the vast Montana sky, a canopy of light guiding their way across the darkened prairie. "What happens now?" Olivia asked as the cabin came into view, its silhouette familiar and welcoming against the night sky. Jack's profile was thoughtful in the starlight. "That depends on what you want, Olivia. I want what's best for Tommy, for this place to be a real home for him, and for yourself." Jack prompted gently. "What do you want for yourself?" Olivia took a deep breath. "I want to stop feeling guilty for being alive when Joseph isn't, for laughing, for—" she hesitated, "for having feelings for you." Jack brought the wagon to a halt before the cabin. In the stillness, she could hear the soft nickering of the horses, the distant call of a night bird, the steady rhythm of her own heart. "Joseph loved you," Jack said. "He would want you to be happy, to live fully. That's what I would want for my Clara if things had been reversed." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes at the mention of Jack's lost wife. "How can you be sure?" "Because that's what love is," he said simply, "wanting the best for someone even when you're not there to see it." He climbed down from the wagon and came around to her side, lifting his arms to help her down. As her feet touched the ground, his hands remained at her waist, and Olivia made no move to step away. "I care for you, Olivia Morgan," Jack said, his voice low and fervent in the darkness. "More than I thought possible after losing Clara. If you need time, I understand, but I wanted you to know." In answer, Olivia raised herself on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, a question more than a statement. Jack remained perfectly still for a heartbeat, then his arms wrapped around her, drawing her closer as he returned the kiss with gentle passion. When they broke apart, both were breathing unsteadily. Jack rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed as if memorizing the moment. "I should get Tommy inside," Olivia whispered. Jack nodded, reluctantly releasing her. "I'll see to the horses." That night, lying in her bed, Olivia touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of Jack's kiss. Beside her, Tommy slept peacefully, unaware of the momentous shift that had occurred. Outside, the autumn wind whispered through the trees, and somewhere in the darkness, an owl called to its mate. For the first time in months, Olivia fell asleep with hope blooming in her heart. The weeks that followed were filled with preparations for winter. Jack and Olivia worked side by side, harvesting the garden, repairing the cabin's chinking, stockpiling firewood. Tommy started attending the small schoolhouse 5 miles away, riding the gentle mare Jack had trained especially for him. Their relationship evolved naturally, with small touches and stolen kisses when Tommy wasn't looking. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, planning improvements to the homestead, discussing Tommy's education, dreaming of the future in ways that increasingly included them all. One crisp October morning, Jack announced he needed to make a trip to town for supplies before the winter weather set in. "Is there anything special you need?" he asked as he saddled his horse. Olivia handed him a list of essentials: flour, sugar, coffee, lamp oil. "Nothing fancy. We'll manage with what we have." Jack studied her face for a moment. "You've been managing for a long time, Olivia. It's all right to want more than just the essentials sometimes." She smiled, touched by his perception. "Perhaps some peppermint sticks for Tommy and maybe some hair ribbons." "Blue ones?" "Hair ribbons it is," he agreed, his eyes warm with affection. He kissed her lightly before mounting his horse. "I'll be back by nightfall." But nightfall came and went with no sign of Jack. Olivia tried to quell her rising anxiety as she put Tommy to bed, assuring him that Jack had probably just been delayed in town. "Maybe he's bringing us a surprise," Tommy suggested sleepily. "Like a puppy. I asked him for a puppy last week." Olivia smoothed his hair. "Did you now?" "Well, puppies or not, I'm sure he'll be home soon." But as the hours passed and the night deepened, her concern grew into fear. 1,000 terrible scenarios played through her mind: Jack injured in an accident, set upon by thieves, lost in the vastness of the territory. Or worse, the possibility that had lurked in the back of her mind, despite everything, that he had simply decided to move on, to return to the wandering life he had known for so long. Dawn broke with still no sign of him. Olivia went through the morning chores mechanically, feeding the animals, making breakfast for Tommy, sending him off to school with reassurances she didn't feel. She was mucking out the barn when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Rushing outside, her heart leapt at the sight of Jack's familiar figure on horseback. But as he drew closer, she could see he wasn't alone. Another rider accompanied him, a woman, sitting straight and proud on a chestnut mare. Confusion and a sick feeling of betrayal washed over Olivia. Had Jack brought another woman to the homestead? Was this why he had been delayed? She stood frozen as they approached, noting the woman's fine clothes and the elegant way she sat her horse. As they drew up before the cabin, Jack dismounted quickly, his expression a mixture of apology and something else Olivia couldn't quite read. "Olivia," he said, coming to her immediately. "I'm sorry I didn't make it back last night. There was a situation in town." The woman dismounted gracefully, removing her riding gloves. She was older than Olivia had first thought, perhaps in her 50s, with silver threading through her dark hair and lines of character etched around her eyes. "Mrs. Olivia Morgan," Jack said formally. "May I present Mrs. Alina Reed?" "My mother." Relief washed over Olivia so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. "Your mother? I didn't know." "Neither did I," Jack said ruefully. "Not until I walked into the general store yesterday and found her inquiring about me." He turned to the older woman. "Mother, this is Olivia Morgan, the lady I told you about." Alina Reed stepped forward, her keen eyes assessing Olivia with undisguised interest. "My son has told me a great deal about you, Mrs. Morgan, and about your homestead." "I apologize for the unexpected intrusion, but when I finally located Jackson after 5 years of searching, I was reluctant to let him out of my sight too quickly." Olivia's mind raced to make sense of this development. 5 years, but I thought, Jack said his family. Understanding dawned in Aliner's eyes. Ah, he told you about Clara and little Emma. She glanced at her son with a mixture of sympathy and exasperation, but perhaps not the whole story. Jack ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically discomfited. It's complicated, Olivia. I should have explained everything sooner, but I wasn't sure how. Perhaps we could continue this conversation inside, Aliner suggested, glancing at the gathering clouds. It looks like snow is coming. Inside the cabin, Olivia busied herself making coffee, her thoughts in turmoil. Jack and his mother spoke quietly by the fire, their conversation too low for her to hear. When she brought the coffee, Aliner accepted a cup with a gracious smile. You have a lovely home, Mrs. Morgan. Jackson tells me you've done most of the work yourselves. Thank you, Olivia replied automatically, and please call me Olivia. Olivia, then. Aliner's gaze was direct but kind. I imagine you have questions. Olivia looked at Jack, who seemed uncharacteristically unsure of himself. I thought your family was dead, she said quietly. You told me you lost them to cholera. I lost Clara and Emma, Jack confirmed, his voice tight with old pain. My wife and daughter, that much was true, but my mother. He glanced at Aliner. We had a falling out before I married Clara. I was young, headstrong. Mother didn't approve of my choice, thought Clara was too delicate for frontier life. I was wrong, Aliner admitted. Clara loved my son truly, and she tried her best to adapt. By the time I realized my mistake and tried to reconcile, Jackson had moved west with his new family. I followed their trail, but I was always months behind. When cholera took them, Jack continued, I was lost. I blamed myself for bringing Clara west, for not being able to save her or Emma. I couldn't face returning home, facing my mother's justified recriminations, so I just drifted. While I continued searching, Aliner added, following rumors, hiring detectives when I could afford it. When I heard a man matching Jackson's description was working on a homestead near Bear Creek, I came immediately. Olivia's head was spinning. So you're not. She hesitated, unsure how to phrase it delicately. A penniless drifter, Jack supplied with a wry smile. Not exactly, though I've lived as one these past years. The Reed family owns considerable property in Pennsylvania. Mother runs it all now. Quite successfully, Aliner added with dignified pride. Though it would be easier with my son's assistance. That's partly why I've been so determined to find him. Olivia felt suddenly small and provincial. Jack Jackson was from a wealthy Eastern family. What could he possibly see in a struggling widow on a half-developed homestead? As if reading her thoughts, Jack moved to her side, taking her hand. Olivia, I know this is a shock. I should have told you everything from the beginning. But nothing has changed about how I feel about you and Tommy or about wanting to build a life here. Aliner watched them with shrewd eyes. Jackson tells me he's asked to court you properly, she said, that he hopes to make this place his home. Olivia found her voice. Yes, we've been discussing it. And what are your thoughts on the matter? Aliner asked directly. Mother, Jack protested. This isn't an inquisition. It's all right, Olivia said. She met Aliner's gaze steadily. I care deeply for your son, Mrs. Reed. He has been a blessing to Tommy and me during a difficult time, but I don't want him to stay out of obligation or pity. My son has never done anything out of obligation in his life, Aliner said dryly. It's one of his more frustrating qualities. If he wants to stay, it's because he truly wishes to. Jack squeezed Olivia's hand. I do wish to, more than anything. The front door burst open, bringing a gust of cold air and a flurry of snowflakes. Tommy rushed in, his cheeks red with excitement and cold. School let out early because of the snow, and he stopped short at the sight of Aliner. Who are you, Tommy? Olivia admonished gently. Manners. Jack stepped forward, placing a hand on Tommy's shoulder. Tommy, this is my mother, Mrs. Reed. She's come all the way from Pennsylvania to visit us. Tommy's eyes widened. You have a mother? I thought your family was all dead. Tommy, Olivia gasped, but Alina laughed, a warm, genuine sound. Children and their honesty, it's refreshing. She extended her hand to Tommy. I am very much alive, young man, and very pleased to meet you. Jackson has told me what a fine helper you are around the homestead. Tommy shook her hand solemnly. Jack's teaching me everything. He says I'm a natural with horses, just like he was at my age. I'm sure you are, Alina agreed. She glanced out the window at the thickening snow. It appears I may be imposing on your hospitality longer than intended, Olivia. That storm is setting in quickly. You're welcome to stay as long as needed, Olivia said automatically, though her mind raced with practical concerns about accommodations and food. I'll bring in more firewood, Jack said, reading her thoughts as he so often did. And check on the animals. Tommy, want to help? As they bundled up and headed out into the snow, Alina moved to stand beside Olivia at the window, watching them go. He's different with you, she observed. More settled. More like the boy I raised and less like the ghost he became after losing Clara. Olivia didn't know how to respond. He's been good to us, she said simply. Alina turned to face her directly. When Jackson told me he wanted to stay here to marry you if you'd have him, I'll admit I had reservations. I came partly to see what kind of woman could heal my son's heart after such loss. Olivia's breath caught. He spoke of marriage, a small smile curved Alina's lips. He said he hadn't formally asked yet, but that he intended to, that he'd found where he belonged at last. Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. And what do you think now that you've met me? I think, Alina said carefully, that my son has excellent taste, and that perhaps this remote homestead isn't so very far from Pennsylvania after all, especially for a grandmother eager to spoil her grandchildren. The storm raged for 3 days, transforming the landscape into a wonderland of white. Alina Reed proved herself surprisingly adaptable to frontier conditions, helping with cooking and mending, entertaining Tommy with stories of Jack's childhood, and gradually drawing Olivia into conversations that ranged from practical homesteading advice to fashion in Philadelphia. On the evening of the 3rd day, as Tommy slept and Alina retired to the small room Olivia had hastily prepared for her, Jack and Olivia found themselves alone by the fire for the first time since his mother's arrival. I'm sorry I didn't tell you everything, Jack said without preamble. About my family, my past. Olivia studied the flames, gathering her thoughts. I understand why you might have been reluctant, but Jackson, I need to know who you really are if we're to have a future together. He moved closer, taking her hands in his. I am the man you've known these past months. The name and the circumstances may be different, but my feelings for you and Tommy, my desire to build a life here, those are completely real. Your mother spoke of your family's properties in Pennsylvania, Olivia said hesitantly. Won't you miss that life, the comfort, the society? Jack shook his head. I was never suited to that world even before I left. I need open spaces, honest work, the satisfaction of building something with my own hands. His eyes held hers intently. I need you and Tommy, the rest is just details. And what about your mother? She clearly wants you to return east with her. Mother has always had strong opinions about what's best for me, Jack said with a rueful smile, but she also wants me to be happy. She can see what you and Tommy mean to me. Outside, the wind howled around the cabin corners, but inside was warmth and the scent of pine and the steady beating of 2 hearts finding their rhythm together. I love you, Olivia Morgan, Jack said simply. I didn't expect to love anyone after Clara, didn't think I deserved it. But you and Tommy gave me a reason to stop wandering, to believe in possibilities again. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. I love you too, Jack, but I'm afraid of what? Of losing you, of Tommy losing you. Life out here is uncertain. Joseph thought we would have decades together, and instead we had barely 5 years. Jack pulled her gently into his arms. None of us knows what tomorrow will bring. All we can do is cherish each day we're given. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Let me cherish my days with you, Olivia. Let me be a father to Tommy, a partner to you for whatever time we have. In answer, Olivia lifted her face to his, her kiss conveying what words could not: acceptance, promise, love. The following morning, with the storm cleared and the world transformed into a glistening white expanse, Jack asked Tommy to help him check the fences for damage. Eleanor and Olivia watched them go, two figures trudging through the snow, the man occasionally reaching down to help the boy over deeper drifts. "He's going to ask Tommy's permission to marry you," Eleanor observed. Olivia turned to her in surprise. "How do you know?" "Because that's the kind of man I raised him to be," Eleanor replied with quiet pride. "And because he told me last night that a boy deserves to be consulted about who's going to be his new father." Warmth bloomed in Olivia's chest. "Tommy adores him already." "The feeling is mutual," Eleanor assured her. She hesitated, then added, "I hope you'll consider visiting Pennsylvania someday. Not to stay," she added quickly, seeing Olivia's expression. "I understand this is your home, but perhaps for a visit. There are cousins Jack's age who would love to reconnect with him, and the Reed family estate has been without children's laughter for too long." "I'd like that," Olivia said, surprised to find she meant it. "Tommy should know his family, all of his family." When Jack and Tommy returned, there was a conspiratorial air between them, shared glances and suppressed smiles that told Olivia all she needed to know even before Jack asked to speak with her privately. He led her to the barn, where the sweet smell of hay and the quiet nickering of horses created an atmosphere of peaceful intimacy. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box that seemed incongruous with his practical work clothes. "I've been carrying this since I went to town," he admitted. Waiting for the right moment, he opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a single pearl. "It was my grandmother's. Mother brought it, hoping." He took a deep breath. "Olivia Morgan, will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Olivia looked from the ring to Jack's face, seeing there all the hope and love and promise of a future brighter than she had dared to imagine after Joseph's death. "Yes," she said, her voice steady and sure. "Yes, I will." Jack slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into an embrace that held the promise of a lifetime of such moments of partnership, of family, of love renewed against all odds. "Tommy has already started calling me Pa when you're not around," Jack confessed against her hair. "He asked if that was all right, and I told him it was the greatest honor I could imagine." Tears of joy spilled down Olivia's cheeks. "He needs you, we both do, and I need you," Jack replied. "Both of you, always." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in town, with Eleanor Reed standing proudly beside them and Tommy serving as best man, his chest puffed out with importance. The community turned out in force, bringing food and gifts and well wishes for the widow Morgan and the drifter who had found his home at last. As spring melted the snows and brought new life to the land, Jack and Olivia worked side by side to expand the homestead. With funds from Jack's Eastern inheritance, they purchased additional acreage, built a larger barn, and invested in quality breeding stock that would form the foundation of a prosperous ranch. Eleanor Reed departed for Pennsylvania with promises to return in the summer, taking with her detailed measurements for new clothes for them all, and plans to ship out books for Tommy's education, and seeds for Olivia's garden. One evening, as the lengthening days of late spring bathed the world in golden light, Jack found Olivia sitting on the porch, her hands resting protectively over her abdomen. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked, concern in his voice as he sat beside her. Olivia turned to him with a radiant smile. "Better than all right, Jack, I'm going to have a baby." Joy transformed his face as he gathered her into his arms. "A baby, you're sure?" She nodded against his chest. "Dr. Williams confirmed it when I was in town yesterday. He thinks sometime in late autumn." Jack placed a gentle hand over hers on her still flat stomach. "Another child," he said wonderingly. "Another chance." Olivia covered his hand with her own. "Tommy is so excited to be a big brother, he's already making plans to teach the baby to ride." "This child will have the best big brother imaginable," Jack agreed. and the most beautiful, strongest mother. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in vibrant hues of pink and gold, Jack and Olivia remained on the porch, talking softly of the future, of the child to come, of the life they were building together. Inside the cabin, Tommy slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that he was loved and protected. In the barn, horses and cattle settled for the night, the fruits of hard work and hopeful planning. Across the valley, lights twinkled from neighboring homesteads, a reminder of the community that had embraced them. And on the horizon, where once Olivia had seen only hardship and lonely struggle, there now stretched endless possibility, a future built on love that had found them when they least expected it, when a broken wagon wheel and a chance encounter had changed everything. "Do you ever think about that day we met?" she asked softly. "When you found Tommy trying to fix the wagon wheel," Jack smiled, drawing her closer against the evening chill. "I think about it every day, how close I came to riding past, to missing all of this." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "When I told Tommy that fixing the wagon was a father's work, I had no idea I was speaking my own future into existence." "Perhaps some part of you knew," Olivia suggested. "Perhaps we were always meant to find each other." As stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky, Jack and Olivia Reed sat together in the growing darkness, bound by love that had bridged loss and loneliness, by shared dreams of the future, and by the simple miracle of having found, in the vast wilderness of the Montana Territory, exactly where they belonged. In the years that followed, the Reed homestead flourished, becoming one of the most prosperous ranches in the territory. Tommy grew into a fine young man with his stepfather's skill with horses and his mother's quiet strength. The baby, a girl they named Hope, was joined by two brothers in quick succession, filling the expanded cabin with laughter and activity. Eleanor Reed became a regular visitor, arriving each summer laden with gifts and Eastern refinements, departing each fall with reluctance and promises to return. Under her influence, the homestead gradually acquired touches of elegance: leaded glass windows, fine furnishings, a piano that Olivia learned to play in the quiet evenings. But at its heart, the Reed Ranch remained what it had always been: a place built by love and hard work, where a broken family had found healing and a wandering soul had found his purpose. And each year, on the anniversary of the day they met, Jack and Olivia would ride out alone to the spot where a broken wagon wheel had brought them together, to remember how close they had come to missing each other, and to give thanks for second chances and the unexpected turns that lead us home.